I remember the exact moment I saw his name flash on my phone after 5 long years of silence. It was a chilly autumn evening, the kind where the wind whistles softly through the trees, carrying a mix of crisp leaves and distant memories. I was sitting alone on my porch, wrapped in a thick blanket, staring at the darkening sky. The world had moved on, I had moved on, or so I thought. Then his name appeared on the screen, Mark. A wave of disbelief crashed over me. My heart stuttered, then sank. I didn't know if I should answer. After all these years, after all the pain, the unanswered calls, the broken promises, and the silence, why now? I swiped to open the message. I'm coming home tomorrow. We need to talk. 5 simple words, yet they hit me like a freight train. Coming home. After 5 years. After everything. The last time I saw Mark was a blur of hurried words and slammed doors. He had left without warning, without a goodbye. His job overseas was demanding, he said, but that was no excuse for the cold distance that followed. Months turned into years. No calls, no texts, no letters. Only silence. At first, I waited. I hoped. I cried myself to sleep more nights than I cared to admit. But eventually, I realized the truth. I was alone. And slowly, painfully, I rebuilt my life. I found my own happiness, not with him, but with someone else. His name was James. Kind, steady, and understanding. He didn't sweep me off my feet with grand gestures, but with quiet loyalty and respect. He never tried to erase my past. Instead, he helped me heal. Now, as the clock ticked closer to Mark's arrival, my mind spun with questions. What did he want after all this time? Was it regret? Or something else? I didn't know if I was ready to face him. That night, sleep eluded me. Memories of us flooded back. The laughter, the fights, the promises made in reckless youth. But beneath it all, a cold ember of anger burned. How dare he come back and disrupt the fragile peace I'd built? The next day, the sound of a car pulling up to the driveway shattered the quiet. I stood behind the curtain, heart pounding as I saw him step out. Older, worn, but unmistakably Mark. He looked up, his eyes searching. When our gazes met, the years of silence seemed to dissolve, replaced by a tension so thick I could almost taste it. Emily, he said, his voice a mixture of hope and hesitation. For a moment, I said nothing. Then I stepped out of the shadows. Mark, I replied, my voice steady but cold. He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Can we talk? I nodded slowly, already knowing this conversation would change everything. If you're enjoying this story, please like and subscribe to my channel for more emotional stories like this. Mark sat across from me at the kitchen table, the same one we had bought together 10 years ago when life felt like it would always be easy. It felt surreal, this man, my husband, who had vanished from my life, now sitting here like we'd only been apart for a week. The silence between us was heavy. I watched him fidget with his hands, rub the back of his neck, and glance around the room like he was looking for something familiar to hold on to. So, I finally said, my voice calm but firm, you said you wanted to talk. Go ahead. He took a deep breath. I know I owe you an explanation, Emily. I know I messed up. Messed up? I cut in sharply. Mark, you disappeared. For 5 years. Not a word. Not even a birthday text. You didn't mess up. You abandoned me. He winced. I didn't mean to. I thought I was doing the right thing at the time. Work got complicated overseas. I kept thinking I'd come back sooner. But then, I held up my hand. Don't feed me half-truths. Just say what happened. He shifted uncomfortably. The company offered me a major promotion, but it required me to stay longer. And there were personal issues. I was ashamed, I didn't want to tell you I failed in some things. I thought, maybe you'd be better off without me for a while. I leaned back in my chair, studying him. Better off? That was my choice to make, not yours. You just decided for both of us. His gaze dropped to the table. For a moment, I let the silence stretch between us, heavy and uncomfortable. I still love you, he said quietly. The words hung in the air like smoke. Once, they might have made my heart race. Now they just sounded hollow. You don't get to say that after everything you've done, I replied flatly. He looked up, his jaw tightening. I came back for us. I want to make things right. I folded my arms. Us? You mean the version of US that existed before you decided your career was more important than your marriage? He leaned forward, trying to catch my eye. Emily, I can change. I know I hurt you, but I'm here now. I almost laughed. Here now, as if that erased 5 years of loneliness. Before I could respond, James walked into the kitchen. He had just come home from work, his tie loosened, his expression calm but alert. Hi, babe, he said to me, leaning down to kiss my forehead before acknowledging Mark with a polite nod. I didn't know we had company. Mark's face hardened instantly. Who's this? This is James, I said plainly. My partner. The muscle in Mark's jaw twitched. Your partner? Yes, I said, keeping my voice steady. James and I have been together for 3 years. Mark's eyes flashed. So you just moved on? I raised an eyebrow. Moved on? Mark, you vanished. You didn't just go on a business trip. You disappeared without a trace. What did you expect me to do? Sit here forever, waiting like a widow who doesn't even get the dignity of a death certificate. James placed a hand gently on my shoulder. Emily owes you nothing, Mark. Mark's glare shifted to him. You don't get to talk about what she owes me. She's my wife. On paper, I said sharply. And that's something we'll be fixing soon. The look in Mark's eyes darkened. I could see his pride cracking, his control slipping. This wasn't a man returning for love. This was a man whose ego had just been wounded. I realized something in that moment. Mark didn't come back for me. He came back because he wanted to reclaim what he thought still belonged to him. Why now, Mark? I asked, my voice quieter but sharper. Why after all this time? He hesitated. I lost my position overseas. The company's downsizing. I figured maybe we could start fresh here. The truth dropped like a stone between us. So that was it. Not love. Not regret. Not even guilt. Just convenience. I stood up slowly. I see. Mark's voice softened again, like he thought he could smooth over the jagged edges. Emily, please. I made mistakes, but I came back because I still believe in us. I tilted my head. You don't get to believe in something you abandoned. James reached for my hand, and I took it without hesitation. I watched Mark's eyes narrow, that flicker of resentment, that flash of entitlement. And that's when an idea started forming in my mind. Revenge. Not loud, not messy, but sharp, quiet, and unforgettable. I wasn't going to scream, throw things, or beg for closure. No. I was going to let him unravel himself. Mark, I said finally, if you want to talk about the future, we can. But it will be on my terms. And it won't be today. His shoulders slumped slightly, like he'd expected me to argue, maybe even plead. Instead, I was calm, controlled, and that unnerved him more than my anger ever could. He left a few minutes later, promising he'd be in touch. As his car pulled out of the driveway, James looked at me. You okay? I smiled faintly. I'm better than okay. I think it's time he learns what it feels like to lose control. James studied me for a moment, then smiled knowingly. Just don't burn the house down in the process. I chuckled softly. Oh, I won't. But I'll make sure he remembers this for the rest of his life. That night, I lay awake thinking about all the ways I could respond to Mark's return. And every scenario had the same ending. Mark alone, staring at the pieces of the life he once took for granted. The first step? Make him believe he still had a chance. The second step? Let him ruin it all by showing his true colors. The plan was already taking shape. I'd be polite, welcoming even, but only enough to make him comfortable. I'd ask about his life overseas, encourage him to share his success stories, all while quietly noting the inconsistencies. I'd let him think he was winning me back, while subtly involving people who mattered to him. Old friends, his sister, even mutual acquaintances. He'd have to face the truth about himself, and this time, there'd be no running away. The next time we met, it would be on my turf, and I'd be ready. The days that followed Mark's return felt like walking a tightrope. Every conversation, every smile I gave him was calculated, a delicate dance between letting him believe he was gaining ground and watching him stumble in his own arrogance. Mark was desperate to reclaim the life he thought was his by right, but I could see how fragile his ego really was beneath the surface. His pride made him careless, and I was ready to watch him unravel, piece by piece. Our next meeting was at the little cafe where we used to spend lazy Saturday mornings. I arrived early, dressed simply but confidently, the way I'd learned to be after 5 years of growing into my own skin. Mark showed up late, looking tired but trying hard to appear composed. He smiled when he saw me, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. His hands were restless, tapping the table, fiddling with his phone. "So," he began, "how have you been? How's life with James?" I smiled thinly. "We're good. Life moves on, Mark. You should try it sometime." He chuckled nervously. "Yeah, I suppose I should." I leaned in, voice soft but deliberate. "You know, it's funny how time changes people. I thought you'd be different when you came back. More humble." His smile faltered. "I'm trying to make up for lost time." "Trying?" I repeated. "It seems more like you're trying to convince yourself." The conversation was polite, but edged with tension. Mark talked about his failed overseas venture, how the company had let him go, how he'd lost everything. I nodded, feigning sympathy, but storing every word away. That evening, I sent a few carefully worded messages to some of Mark's old friends and family, just casual reminders that he was back and trying to rebuild. It didn't take long for the cracks to begin showing. A few days later, I met Mark at my apartment. He had that same desperate gleam in his eyes, as if clinging to the hope that I'd simply forgive and forget. "I've been thinking," he said, "maybe we should try counseling, just to see if there's still something left." I studied him carefully. "Counseling is a good idea," I said, "if it's for both of us. But I'm not sure you're ready to face the truth about yourself." His face darkened. "What truth?" I smiled quietly. "That you ran away from your problems. That you left me alone to pick up the pieces. That you thought your career mattered more than our marriage." Mark's jaw clenched, but he didn't reply. Then I dropped the next part, the one I knew would hurt the most. "Do you know what people are saying? That you're selfish, unreliable, and worst of all, a coward." His eyes blazed with anger. "Who's saying that?" "Mutual friends, your sister. Even some of your business contacts. They wonder if you ever plan to come back." Mark's shoulders slumped as if the weight of those words finally settled on him. "You don't understand," he whispered. "I was doing my best. Your best was leaving me in the dark." I stood up, walking to the window. The city lights flickered outside, but inside, the air was thick with tension. He reached for my hand, but I pulled away. "No more lies, Mark." The next week, I quietly made calls, talking to people Mark thought he could charm, but who had their own grudges. I sent a few anonymous emails to his old business contacts, reminding them of his abrupt disappearance and broken promises. It was subtle, slow work, but I was patient. Revenge was a game of shadows, invisible moves that only became clear when it was too late. One afternoon, Mark showed up at my workplace unannounced. I was sitting in a meeting room, heart pounding as he knocked lightly on the door. "Emily, we need to talk," he said, eyes earnest. I motioned for him to sit. "About what?" "About us. About what I'm willing to do to make things right." I stared at him. "Mark, you don't get to decide what us means anymore. You walked away. You broke trust. Now, everyone's starting to see the real you." His face tightened. "What are you talking about?" I pulled out my phone, showing him a few carefully curated messages and emails, polite, professional, but devastating in what they implied. He scanned them quickly. The color drained from his face. This is what you've been doing?" I nodded. "You wanted to come back. But you have to be ready to face the consequences." That night, I sat with James, who had been quietly supportive throughout everything. "You're playing a dangerous game," he said. I smiled. "It's not dangerous if you know the rules." James squeezed my hand. "Just don't lose yourself in the process." "I won't. I'm not her anymore." Mark's demeanor changed after that. His visits grew less frequent. His messages became desperate and angry. I watched from a distance as the carefully crafted image he tried to build started crumbling. One evening, I received a call from Mark's sister. "Emily," she said hesitantly, "he's really struggling."
He keeps asking about you.
"About what went wrong?" I took a deep breath. "Tell him he has to own his mistakes, and that some things can't be fixed by words alone." In the end, Mark's own flaws, his pride, selfishness, and refusal to truly face himself were the agents of his downfall. I didn't need to yell, scream, or beg for justice. I just needed to hold a mirror up and let him see the truth reflected back. If this story keeps you on the edge of your seat, don't forget to like and subscribe. More stories of betrayal and clever revenge are coming your way. As the weeks passed, Mark faded from my life, no longer a threat or a ghost haunting my peace. And I found strength in letting go, power in choosing my own happiness. The game of shadows had been played well, and the victor was clear. 3 months. That's how long it took for Mark's perfect facade to finally crumble. By then, the whispers had grown into full conversations. People in our old circle didn't just remember that he'd left me. They knew why he hadn't come back sooner. His sister had stopped defending him. Old friends who once looked up to him now avoided his calls. His overseas contacts?
Gone.
Mark had burned his own bridges. I had simply lit the path so everyone could see the ashes. It was a Thursday evening when he showed up at my door for the last time. His clothes were wrinkled, his hair unkempt, and for the first time since I'd known him, he looked small. Like the man who had always been so sure of himself had finally been hollowed out from the inside. I opened the door, but didn't invite him in. "Emily," he said, his voice hoarse. "Please, can we talk? Just one last time." I stepped outside, crossing my arms. "Say what you came to say." He took a deep breath. "I've lost everything. My job, my friends, even my family barely talks to me now. And I know it's because of you." I tilted my head slightly. "No, Mark. It's because of you. All I did was remind people of what you chose to do." His shoulders slumped. I thought you'd understand why I left. That you'd forgive me. You didn't leave, Mark. You abandoned. There's a difference." My voice was calm, but inside, my pulse was steady with finality. "And forgiveness? That's not something you demand. It's something you earn. You never even tried." He stared at me for a long moment. "So that's it. That's it." I watched his face shift, from anger, to hurt, to something I hadn't seen before, acceptance. He gave a slow nod, like a man finally realizing the fight was over. "Goodbye, Emily," he murmured. I didn't say goodbye back. He walked down the driveway without looking over his shoulder. When he reached his car, I closed the door and locked it, not out of fear, but as a symbolic final act. That chapter of my life was sealed shut. The next day, I filed for divorce. Not quietly. Not in secrecy. I mailed the papers to him at his temporary address, knowing full well they would arrive at the same time as the public announcement I had scheduled with our mutual friends, a charity event I was co-hosting with James. We'd been working on it for months, and the guest list was full of people Mark once prided himself on knowing. The night of the event, the room was alive with warm light, soft laughter, and the quiet hum of success. I stood beside James, hand in his, as we welcomed guests. It wasn't about flaunting a new life. It was about showing I had won. Mark wasn't there, of course, but I knew he'd hear about it, and I knew he'd see the photos. Me, smiling, confident, surrounded by people who respected me, living the life he thought he could just waltz back into. 2 weeks later, the divorce was finalized. No messy fights over property. No bitter court battles. Just a clean cut because there was nothing left for him to claim. James and I celebrated with a quiet dinner at home. No champagne, no grand speeches. Just peace. "You did it," James said softly as we cleared the dishes. I nodded. "No, we did it. But more than that, I let go. That's the real win." He smiled. "You played the long game. And you won without even breaking a sweat." If you followed this story from the beginning, make sure to like and subscribe for more stories about strength, resilience, and justice. Months later, I heard that Mark had moved to a smaller town, taking whatever work he could find. I didn't feel sorry for him. Not because I was cruel, but because I knew he'd been given chances, more than most people would get, and he had squandered them all. I wasn't the same woman he'd left behind. I'd built a life without him, and it was stronger, brighter, and more real than anything we'd ever had together. When someone walks away without looking back, don't waste your life waiting for their return. Build your own happiness, and if they ever come knocking, let them see the home they can never enter again.